Hello, welcome to the program. I am Omini Odan. In the wake of March, Nigeria began to experience in full scale the coronavirus pandemic, which subsequently brought the nation under lockdown. All sectors, including aviation industry, in the first phase of 6 months. Nigeria and the global community were brought to a standstill. It is now 7 months down the line, and critical forces of business activities and the economy have begun to open up gradually under the new normal. The aviation industry is one major area without which global business relations and other critical partnership could rarely happen. Much has awakened to this reality. Nigeria, thanks to the Minister of Aviation, who at the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 announced the resumption of international flights in Nigeria, and it's finally commenced on the 5th of September after postponement of an initial slated date of August 29, 2020. The aviation subsector in the economy globally remains the engine of growth in all spheres of life. Movement of people across nations, including commodities. Tourism is substantially driven by the aviation industry, with interwoven relationship between aviation and economy. It is obvious that the role of aviation in any economy cannot be quantified. Aviation, for example, provided a vital force in Nigeria and midwifed critical challenges of the economy under the current global recession induced and heightened by COVID-19. Aviation in Nigeria and the national economy, resumption of international flights and domestic flights, reopening of Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, aviation reforms, evacuation and delivery of COVID-19 supplies. That is our focus tonight, plus more on NTA Tuesday Live. But first, this background report put together by Emmanuel Anyimiro.
Tranquility was the ambience at the Murtala Muhammed International Airport, one of Africa's busiest airports, for more than 3 months, with the airspace totally grounded due to the COVID-19 lockdown. The situation reaffirmed the importance of transportation to economic vibrancy.
Nigerian airlines lost almost $1 billion in revenue, as well as an additional $800 million, which these airlines would have been able to remit as charges to the federal government, which will have increased our GDP by $800 million.
A lot of events are now done virtually, from trade shows to concerts to even purely ceremonial events. So you find that business travel, which is the primary income earner for the aviation industry, is going to be redefined at a much lower level than we have seen in the past.
As the dark cloud fades off, the airwaves are becoming active, with flight operations ongoing at the domestic services since the 8th of July. The dynamics associated with trade and investment in Nigeria's commercial hub, Lagos, is invariably being restored.
But there are some things that would involve interface between people, which the opening of the aviation now would bring about. The opening of the airspace now, people will begin to move. As people are moving, goods and services will begin to move. And most importantly, before the opening of the international passengers route, the ticket fare were expensive. The cost of moving goods were also very expensive. Now you expect those things to drop. And once they drop, you're going to stimulate more travel.
For me, the palliative for that sector should be a direct intervention in terms of funding for that sector, because that sector is a very critical sector. It's highly capitalized in terms of funding, because most of them do their repairs outside. Will the CBN be able to give them we will have the exchange rate volatility challenges now?
Experts say the aviation industry might be experiencing a slow start, never before seen. However, the commencement of international flights will give a rapid push to the resuscitation of the global dwindling economy. Will the aviation sector in Nigeria ever experience an influx of as much as 8.5 million travelers or more in local and international flights subsequently, as it did in the first 6 months of 2019? Only time will tell.
Dabra Gradwa set the tone for the program tonight, the aviation industry and the nation's economy. It's Tuesday Live. At some point, our phone lines will be open, and if we're true to you, please turn down the volume of your television set to avoid the holdback, and in doing this, go straight to the point, raise your concerns, ask your questions, and we shall address them. Also tonight, you can be part of the conversation through our Twitter handle at Tuesday Live NTA. Tonight, joining us from our Enugu Network Center is the Chairman, House Committee on Aviation, Honorable Nolim Naji. Good to have you on the program. In Abuja, we have Managing Director, Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria FAN, Captain Rabiu Yadudu. Welcome to the program.
Good evening, thank you very much.
Chief Balami Isaac, MD, CEO, 7-Star Global Evasion. Good to have you on Tuesday Live tonight.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Also joining us via Zoom is former Director General, Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority, NCAA, Captain former Managing Director, Nigerian Airspace Management Authority, NAMAF, Captain Roland Iyai. Good to have you on the program tonight.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
And sorry for the mix-up, please. Gentlemen, we begin. Before we go to Enugu, let me begin with the Managing Director of Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, FAN. Just before everything locked down and after everything opened, how was it like in terms of operations within the airports?
Well, you can see airports are like, it's like an entire community. So just before the lockdown, we have our operations going on, but there was a general anxiety, fear of the unknown. We can say up to now the coronavirus is not entirely fully understood. It's something where the symptoms are there, the treatment is there, but I believe even the treatment is evolving. So at the beginning, we know there was a coronavirus, but the treatment wasn't assured. Nobody knows how to treat it. We don't know who is bringing it, who is not bringing it. It's not a virus that you can see, a disease that you can easily see. So everyone is a suspect. Every equipment you see, you are scared of touching it because of fear of contamination. So that anxiety was very palpable. And towards the end, when it became very clear that we had to close, it was more like a relief to all of us because we were doing the job, and aviators, we enjoy the business of aviation. And when it becomes, there was so much anxiety and we had to close, the closure, we felt it, we didn't like it, but it gave us a lot of relief, and it assured us of the safety and security we always wish to provide to all our stakeholders.
So how is it like doing the new normal now?
It's still, still doesn't look normal. By name, we still call it the new normal, and we know it's the new normal essentially, but we're still getting to grips with it. But I'm very sure within the next maybe 1 or 2 months, it wouldn't be that much different. The good thing is we are having a lot of support and cooperation from all our stakeholders. Passengers are doing very well, observing the protocols. Our staff have done a lot of training to ensure that we guide and enforce our protocols at the airport terminus. And so far, we are doing very well with the protocols. So we are relaxed with it. But we are definitely looking forward to the day when we do not have to go and operate with these protocols. I'm looking at the day that the coronavirus will finally be over. That is what they were looking forward to.
Okay. Chief Balami, you are a major player in this sector, and when all this was happening, given the fact that people depend on you for monthly wage and other emoluments, how did you feel? Did you imagine coming back to business?
Yeah, well, like the MD of FAN did say, nobody saw this coming, but we have to live with it. We have to accept reality. And we have to move on. Whether you like it or not, the world is actually moving on. But for us in 7-Star Global Hangar, the entire group, we actually saw an opportunity in the challenges. I will tell you that before the lockdown, we had just about 150 staffs or thereabout. But today, we have over 1,000 staffs because we had to see how we could convert our aircraft shop where we make aircraft seats and upholstery generally into face masks and personal protective equipment. So we had to engage hundreds of tailors running shifts across 5 locations in Lagos, you know, providing safety equipment for the industry. So it's been tough. But again, instead of complaining, we had to find a way to diversify. And now that the airport has opened up, we are thinking of coming back to our real core business. We are trying to readjust, but things are quite slow, but we are hopeful. And for me, I think Nigeria, not just us, but I think Nigeria was able to prove herself throughout these challenging times. And I say this because I could see clearly how the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, the FAN, NAMA, and other critical stakeholders were able to, NCA in particular provided the first ever protocol for COVID-19 globally, before even the International Civil Aviation Organization. That even when ICAO was to come up with that protocol, they had to copy from NCAA. You know, Europe had to copy from us. It was never like that before. So I think it was also an opportunity to also show that the aviation industry is a global player, is a global leader. We're also pace setters. And I think that is quite commendable, and I'm happy with my industry.
Before we go to Enugu, quite intriguing and surprising to me, because going to research, reading through literatures, and taking a scroll through what's happening globally, you'll be the first to tell us you saw opportunity within this period. We heard of job cuts, salary cuts. So this never happened within your sector, your company?
Within our company, no. No. As a matter of fact, we were surprised because we pay each of those fashion or tailors per what they produce a day. And a 22-year-old boy in our factory, about 3 of them are earning almost 200,000 naira a month. 180,000, 170,000. The lowest is 50,000 naira, which is above the minimum wage. And that gave us satisfaction that in these hard times, we were able to create a platform, or provide a platform where people can earn source of living.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Just got excited about what you gave us. Let's go to Enugu, where Honorable Nolim Naji is joining us from. You're the chairman of the House Committee on Aviation, and given what transpired, I imagine what would have run through your committee. Would this ever work? Are we going to be inept or no more functioning? But now, look, domestic flights have commenced, international flights have commenced, and all this put together, how does the committee feel now regarding your oversight and other functions you are supposed to interface with the aviation industry?
Even at the point of the COVID-19, the House adjourned for a while, and after they came back, the leadership of the House met and came up with a protocol that enabled the members to come back to sit. And since then, we've been sitting, though it affected, because our committee, because it involves aviation, and you are aware that the aviation industry, it affected, this pandemic affected the industry down to zero, and we were not actually functioning. But we were discussing, we were talking with the aviation industry. If you recall that there was a time, there was an investigative hearing, even at the point of at the peak of that period, but all the same, we were still sitting and we were communicating with them. So, well, now they are back, we continue with our oversight. So it's going to be easy now, because we can now go to visit Lagos, visit other parts of the state where we have to do our work, oversight. So these are the things that we are still we are talking with them. It's not a problem. So So we are discussing. It's not a problem.
So regarding other perspectives, now to Captain Roland Iyayi, we're supposed to actually have the incumbent DG of NCAA, but he couldn't make it to the program. But let's look at regulation within the new normal. And before you respond, could you just sit up, please, so I can see you clearly? Let's look at regulation within the new normal. Does it pose a challenge, or will it also be an opportunity, just like the man from 7-Star Global said?
Well, thank you very much. I wish I could be as optimistic as Balame is. But having said that, I mean, where we are today as an industry, with a new set of protocols put in place, what you end up having basically is a reduction in the operating window of a typical airline. Prior to this time, most airlines couldn't work beyond, sunset and sunrise and sunset. Basically, we're talking about a 12-hour window in a day, simply because most of the airports in the country are actually VFR airfields, in the sense that once it is dark, because we do not have adequate infrastructure in some of these airports, the airports are sort of closed down. What that means essentially is that you have most of the airlines flying primarily to those major airports where you have a major infrastructure, which is why you have Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt accounting for majorly most of the traffic in the country. Now, the airlines with this new requirement would mean that they would actually reduce their operations substantially because of the longer time required to facilitate a flight. If you recall, the airport authorities had initially said airlines, or passengers rather, should get to the airport about 3 hours before flight. That was reviewed to approximately an hour and a half. But even at that, it reduces the operating window such that airlines are now scheduling around that new normal, so that they don't have too many flights operating at, punitive loads, so to speak. Because, the load factor is very critical to the success or otherwise of any airline. So where we are at this point for airlines, the requirements for the new normal has further eroded the window, as it were, window of opportunity and the operating window of airlines. So it's actually made it a little bit more difficult, if nothing else.
Now, let's go to specifics now. Our focus tonight, we have given a generic picture of how it was, how it will be, and hopefully the World Health Organization says maybe COVID-19 will live with us for a long while. Are we going to sustain the protocols, or we are going to relax it? But let's be specific. Let me go to Enugu now. Honorable Nolim, can we speak to the reopening of Akanu Airport at this time? What are the prospects for the nation's economy from that axis of the country?
Well, thank you. The first question is, why did they close the Akanu down? It was closed down because of the collapse of the runway. That's the first thing, Then the Southeast governors, the House, the National Assembly, the clergy, both the bishops, the Ohaneze, and the top people in the Southeast met and went to Mr. President and requested that the runway should be rehabilitated. And then also they met with the minister too, the Minister for Aviation and the MD of FAN, and they all agreed. And luckily, Mr. President approved the sum of 10 billion for the reconstruction of the runway and other facilities. Then when the issue of runway started, at the same time, looked at about aviation is all about safety and security. You look at, okay, the runway is about the safety. They now looked at the issue of security. They now started talking about the perimeter fencing, concrete perimeter fence, actually about the second in Nigeria after Lagos. This is the second one they're experiencing concrete fencing. After the fencing, they now looked at other areas that will assist. They talked about the night landing facilities, airfield lighting. They introduced the airfield lighting. From there, they also talked about other navigational equipments. From there, they talked about, okay, now if you open the airport, what about the terminal building, the existing terminal building? They decided to embark on rehabilitation of the terminal buildings. So these are the things that they're doing, and now they have commissioned the runway, and just about yesterday, they commissioned the first phase of the airfield lighting. The planes can land at night in the Caribbean today. So right now, we are also expecting other projects, the airport projects like the completion of the new terminal building, the international wing of the terminal building, the construction of the cargo building. But I believe that with all these things, the Caribbean International Airport will be set for full operation. But right now, like I'm going to Abuja tomorrow. I'm using the airport tomorrow to Abuja. So the airport is in full operation right now. So the people of Enugu and environs, the southeast and environs, are happy with the development. We're happy, the president, we're happy with the governors of Southeast that facilitated it, the minister, the MD of FAN and other heads of agencies, and especially the governor of Enugu State that also came out and was doing everything possible to support the completion of the airport. The whole Southeast governors came out as one to make sure that this airport was completed. Thank you.
We'll come back to you. Now, MD of FAN, now we're looking at the aviation industry and the economy. Now the airports are open. A lot of expectation. If we want to go into the breakdown, 2017, 2018, 2019, we'll get to that. Now, by your projection, there was a lull. Now, business is picking up. So what are we looking at? Maybe in the next 2 months?
We're looking at very good recovery. I will not say very fast, but it will be very good. Because traditionally, aviation has always been a fast developer. We recover very quickly. In the last 40 years, almost all the major pandemics or otherwise that happen, you see that if you look at it on any chart for us within the industry, you see that the recovery is more like just a blip. It continues rising very rapidly. But this time around, I believe there was no pandemic that was as pronounced or as very widespread and distressed as the coronavirus. So I believe we will still recover, and very rapid and steady recovery. It has never been like this, but we will still get over, because aviation is not, my reason for saying this is aviation is not a luxury. It's a way of life. It connects everything. It connects everyone. And by saying it connects everything and everyone, I'm saying if you look at each part of this sentence, you can break it down in as many ways as you want. It connects everything and everyone. Mention one aspect of our lives that is not connected with aviation, and if you listen to an expert, or if you take away aviation, then that's the time you see actually it's all interconnected. From the family head that travels, when he travels, his family is traveling with him, at least in spirit. His fate and fortune are with him. To the entrepreneur, to the investor, whenever you travel, you don't have to get all the 200 million people traveling. But people move, but when you move your family, those that you support, those that you pay, people move with you. And sometimes when you travel, it is after a week or a month or a year that the fruit of that travel becomes realized by either the people or the region. So I say aviation connects everyone and everything.
Okay. How does this add up if you come by the statement somewhere which says running an airline in Nigeria is a hard business? How do you add up with that?
Yeah, it is a hard business. As a matter of fact, I think it's on record that an average lifespan for an airline in Nigeria is about 10 years. That is, even if the airline does not go down after 10 years, there will be some shake-ups, there will be some challenges. And the reason is simple. I think I was privileged to be a member of the National Carrier Committee in 2015, 2016, thereabout. And I I can say categorically that, you know, why it's difficult to run an airline in this country is that there are so many variables. So many variables involved when you talk about the aviation fuel. Arik could not compete with Emirates into Dubai. One of the major reasons is because of aviation fuel. Emirates were buying Jet A1 at about 15 cents per liter, when Arik here in Nigeria will take fuel at $1 per liter. That's
why I asked the question,
yeah.
How do you add up from what the MD said and what you're saying?
Yeah, so okay.
Towards the economy.
Okay, well, towards the economy. So now, the question the MD is answering is that you are asking in the next 3 months if there's going to be...
It's a projection.
Yeah, projection, yeah. But you are asking how tough it is to do business in Nigeria, and I want to give you those facts and figures, okay. Right? So I talk about aviation fuel. You talk about maintenance. The MD of Arik and Airpeace, in an article I read, they talked about aircraft maintenance C-check between 1.5 to 2 million US dollars per aircraft. You're talking about excluding the downtime, because whenever you don't fly a 737 per day, what you're losing per day is about 100,000 US dollars. That's what you're losing. I'm not talking about the profit or whatever, because there are so many variables involved. Whether your aircraft fly or it does not fly, whether it's on transit to Europe or America for maintenance, you're losing about a week on transit alone, getting visas for your pilot, the flight simulation. There are so many. Then you talk about the world-class aviation catering. Then you talk about the aviation training. Then you talk about the ground support, the logistics. It's not easy. And that is why we are quite happy that the current aviation minister has been engaging stakeholders. And in doing so, being an aviator himself, you know, we are enjoying the privilege of him understanding clearly what needs to be put in place. And I believe that is one of the reasons why he is very, very positive, even though slow due to global challenges, about the national carrier. Whether I call it flag carrier or national carrier, there's a need to have a good synergy. And whether it is a flag carrier or a national carrier, those variables that I just mentioned, the catering, the maintenance, the aviation fuel, if they are not being fixed, is a major problem. So when you talk about the hostility of the environment, how difficult it is to do business in aviation globally, because the profit margin is quite low usually, then I'll tell you that these are the variables. And I can tell you that the government has, you know, committed to that, and we are hopeful that God will give the current administration the grace to pull through, because once you don't have those things in place, you cannot have a sustainable airline.
Okay, let's go to Captain Roland Iyai. Captain Roland, let me go off technicalities now or regulation and ask you this economic question, which is between 2018-2019, there was an influx in terms of revenue within the aviation industry, and it dropped. And the reason that was given by the National Bureau of Statistics is because political activities heightened. One would have expected that it would have been economic activities heightened if aviation made it and the GDP rose from 12-point-something% to 14-point-something% because of political activities. How sustainable will that be if it is not an economic reason but political reason?
Obviously, I mean, when it's politics, it's not sustainable, because, I mean, the political program of any country is tied to a timetable, and that timetable makes it seasonal. And for that reason, for the period where it's seasonal, I mean, you'll see an upsurge. But of course, when there's a lull, it means that everything falls flat as well. Politics cannot sustain aviation. What can sustain aviation is an economy that is growing. And mind you, for the economy to grow, there has to be market access. Market access is provided by aviation. So, I mean, it's a very critical sector. So when you talk about politics, politics on its own cannot sustain the industry. However, other synergistic benefits of economic activities in different sectors of the economy are required to be there for aviation to sustain. The same way the economic activities require aviation to exist, for market access for them to sustain. So this synergy is very critical for the growth of aviation and the sustainability of aviation in any country. And I think for Nigeria, our focus beyond the politics should be how it is government policies can actually sustain economic growth. If and where that is in place, then we now look at the policies driving aviation in the country. If both policies are in sync, then naturally you'll have growth and there'll be economic growth in the longer term. So I think it's important that policies, both for the sector and the overall economy of the country, are in sync for that growth to be in place. But politics, as on by itself, is not any way cannot in any way sustain the industry for growth.
Okay, still on you, there has been this problem of affordability. Going by what the MD of 7-Star Global said, within the period, rather than see problems, they saw opportunity. When can we have it, say, affordability being eroded in Nigeria? People still see the aviation industry as elitist. But in some climes, it has been brought down to almost everybody's show. But in Nigeria, it is still the problem of affordability becomes a challenge. So looking at aviation and the economy, if it does not cut across, how can we solve that?
Well, I would answer that question by saying, let us take the Brazilian example. Brazil has about 220 million people. Brazil has almost the same sociocultural values as Nigeria. Because you go to Brazil, you have a lot of Yorubas there, and you have different people from Nigeria. Now, Brazil has gone through the same sort of tumultuous political experience Nigeria has had. They've had military, they've had both military and civilian, they've had civilian. Now, the issue is, if you look at how they evolved their business, at some point in Brazil, you had only 18 million passengers flying, even though you had over 200 million population. Today, you have over 120 million Brazilians flying. Why was that done? It was done simply by tweaking their policies over time. Now, we have not done anything similar to that in Nigeria simply because our focus is just to allow everybody and anybody to come into the industry without necessarily understanding what the different facets of industry will do to grow in the economy. Until we recognize that it is important to structure our industry vis-a-vis our needs, then we will not be able to address that problem. Affordability is a function of disposable income. Disposable income is a function of the growth in the economy. If there's a dislocation, then obviously you're not going to have anything in that regard. But assuming we had disposable income, we don't have a recession, then it means more and more people can afford to travel by air. The issue will now be capacity. Do we have adequate capacity in the industry to sustain or be able to cater for that particular volume that we're looking at? Otherwise, we're not going to really, won't be able to address the picture or the problem of policy and dislocation and the growth.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to you. Let's go to Enugu. Honorable Nolim, oversighting the aviation industry. How has it been from the perspective of seeing it from the eye of the people that the legislation represents? Is it just oversighting to sustain what the picture is right now, or oversighting towards bringing it to a point where everybody can afford and have it easy and the nation gets return on investment?
Well, I think the direction of as a legislator, what we have tried to do with the aviation industry is to see how we can help them on the aspect of the legislation and oversight. And I believe that the team with my colleagues in the aviation committee and also the Senate chairman of an aviation, Senator Smart Adeyemi, and the colleagues in the aviation Senate, we're actually working with the Minister of Aviation and also the heads of agencies in the industry to see how we can help the industry, because it's not just about ordinary oversighting, but we also need to find a way to help them to sustain, because we are aware that aviation is the gateway to an economy of Nigeria. If you are coming into this country, the first port of call, if you're an investor and you are coming into this country, the first port of call is the airport. We are not going through the land border. We are going through the airports. And what we are trying to do is to see how we can help them, like on the issue of remittance. The aviation sector, the fund is remitting 25% to federal government, But what we are asking is that there should be funds should stop this remittance so that the government can create a 10-year developmental plan where fund can use it to develop the infrastructures at the airports, airport infrastructure, because these things are key to development. You cannot come into an airport. If you come into an airport, let's say that you're coming in to invest in Nigeria, and you just came into a Lagos airport, and you see the Lagos airport in a very bad shape, you'll be discouraged to develop in Nigeria, to invest your money in Nigeria. If you have $1 billion to invest, you want to go back with your money. But if you come into the airport and you see the airport functioning very well, first class terminal buildings, you even want to double your investment. So what we are asking is that they should create an infrastructural development for FAN so that it will help them to sustain, to generate funds. And you see, in terms of security in Nigeria today, there's no way. Most people are afraid of going by road. People hardly travel by road from Lagos to Abuja. Everybody is trying to go by air. So this thing is an opportunity for the aviation sector. It's an opportunity to use it for aviation sector to boost their income through all these lapses in the security situation right now. So what we are doing, we're on our own part as legislators. We are trying to help them. We're also pushing them and also making sure that we oversight them properly so that there won't be any. We also, we are representing the masses. Whatever that is in the interest of the masses, we're doing it. Definitely what we are trying to do is to see a way we can bring down the prices, the cost of a flight, because these things are holistic. If you don't generate enough funds, it will be difficult for industry to bring down the prices. So we are trying to encourage them. We are trying to see how we can use legislation to support the industry so that the industry will be free for everybody, especially the middle class, because the middle class drives the economy. So that's what we are trying to do in terms of support to aviation sector.
Thank you so much. Let's now go to the MD of FAN. You are the center of this, and let me generalize it this way. You are the core manager of the facility called Airports in Nigeria. Managing just for management, managing to plow back to the economy, managing to sustain facility. How's it been?
It has been, well, aviation is always demanding. But for us, that is our business to do it. We have just one focus, to make sure that we deliver the service that is of a standard quality. And for that service, it's all about safety, security, and then comfort, in that order. When I was flying, even during the training, what they tell you is in aviation is safety first, then regulations, and then comfort. This is not to say that comfort is not important, but to say that when the ships are down, aviation is a business where passenger confidence is our primary currency. And to get passenger confidence and sustain it, you must have that safety. So if you have limited resources or funds, you will never go wrong investing in safety first and then regulations. You can see even the regulations where you find there is a possible compromise with the safety. We are allowed to lift the regulations and ensure the safety, because it's not all situations in a flight or airport operation that are covered by the regulation. The permutations are so many. So it's safety first in all our training, then regulation, and then comfort, just to say we need to sustain confidence of all our stakeholders. And for that confidence, the service has to be good and sustainable so that people will always come back. And that's what we are doing here.
Okay, let's go to the economy. I'll concentrate in a few minutes between Balami and Iyai. Let's look at the economics. In 2017, by the records, it is projected that over 9 million passengers passed through the Nigerian airports generally. And looking at the population of Nigeria, which is about 200 million, somebody said that is about 0.2% of the total population using the airport. And if you're talking about econometrics now, GDP contribution of aviation, and if the population that uses the airport is this low, because if you say just 9 million compared to 200 million, GDP growth and contribution of the aviation agency to the economy. So what can be done to jack up this?
Yeah, so you see, first of all, Captain Roland Iyai did mention, he talked about policies that will boost the industry, right? So when you look at it, the major challenge is that everything about aviation is all about this aircraft. The MD of Fund is here. He will tell you that he is having challenges in his inflow because in the last 4 or 5 months, there's no meaningful activity because of the lockdown. Which means that the more aircraft in the air, the more Fund is making money, the more NTA is making money, the more NAMA is making money, the more the industry is booming. And that is where Fund can get money to develop the sector. But you see, if the foundation is not right, then we have issues. And which is what we're trying to correct now, which is what I see the government making effort to correct. I can remember clearly, in 2015, the GMD of NMPC told our committee through one of our members that if all things is in place, Kaduna Refinery alone can produce Evasion Jet A1 between 50 to 70 naira per liter. Locally, we have the crude already. As at that time, aero contractors were struggling to survive with an overhead cost of about 800 million naira on salaries, with fuel cost of about 700 million naira every month. Now, if I'm buying fuel at 220 naira per liter, and my cost is about 7 to 800 million naira per month, what if I buy fuel at 70 or 100 naira per liter? It means most of the airlines you're seeing, their price fare can go down on fuel alone. So I want the government, for us to be able to succeed, to ensure that we have more than 10, 20, 30%. US, about 60% of their populations are flying. You go to Australia, you see about 40% of their population flying. Here, we are still below 10%.
That's why I came with the issue of the affordability.
Which means, so the affordability is that the environment, the variables, an airline want to go out there and they're buying water that they serve on board, the catering, world class but affordable. Now the level of investment you need to do to crash down that price, the catering companies don't have that kind of funding. They're trying their best, but it's not that easy. It's tough. Now, when you talk about maintenance, because fuel alone takes about 40% of your revenue, fuel alone. Maintenance, I just told you how many $1 million, how much you lose whenever the aircraft is even due for maintenance, when it's not even flying, between Nigeria, US, and which is why, of course, 7-Star Global Hangar came on board to say how we can provide that maintenance for the airlines. But you know, it's not easy. It's tough because it's capital intensive. The equipment, the tooling, the training. So the government, the Bank of Industry, in fact, we even deserve what they call Evasion Bank, so that we can focus, because I tell you this, for some years, Emirates was not actually making profit. But you would think they are not making profit, but they are. Because the country understood that that you fly through Emirates, the duty-free shop, you sleep in the hotel, you go for holiday, you go for your medicals. They created the enabling environment, and that is more than profit to them. That is how it works. So when you look at all the variables, if you can look at it critically, create an enabling environment, airlines don't mind selling tickets for 10, 15,000 naira. It's about the cost of maintenance, it's about the cost of fuel, it's about the cost of leasing the aircraft. These are fixed costs that you cannot change. The only thing that will change is those variables that, okay, you are accessing maintenance cheaper locally, you are also accessing aviation fuel cheaper, you know, produced by our local refineries. Thank God for Dangote, refinery. We believe that very soon things will actually change. So when you look at all those issues, until those issues are in place, that is why even the Nigerian Airways could not actually survive. That is why, where is Okada, Chachangi, IRS, all those big airlines? They made so much effort. They struggled. You can complain and say, okay, yeah, some of them, there were issues with corporate culture, corporate governance. Yes, but when you look at it critically, I'm sure even AMCON now will tell you that they respect the owners of ARIC or the owners of Eru, even though it's under receivership, because it's not easy. Aviation is tough. So the point here is, I think the government is doing their best, but they still need to do more. The minister has met with stakeholders. I think that is the highest number of meetings with stakeholders by any minister. And he already knows what is being required. We see him making effort, and all we're saying is Mr. President should give him all the support. The Senate, the House of Reps should give him all the support so that the masses can afford this flight. If between Lagos and Abuja today by road is 15, 20,000 naira, depending on the nature of transportation, right? The air-conditioned buses goes for about 15K. People buy ticket for 20K, 15K, 17K in this country. But when you look at the overhead cost, is it sustainable? It's not. So we must go back to the drawing board. We must look at those variables. We must agree that as a nation, we must tackle them first of all, so that the airlines can flourish. So that when you have that, you may not even worry much about national carrier. Delta, United, American Airlines, they are not owned by the state. British Airways is not owned by the British government. Are you with me? Yeah, we have Ethiopia owned by the government doing very, very well. So there are different models, depending on what model we actually want to copy or we actually want to follow. We can even have our own hybrid. You take a little bit from US, Europe, Asia, Middle East, and you have a concept, a model that works for Nigeria. And it's actually possible.
Let me hold you there. Well, we'll soon have a breather. We'll take a couple of reports, but before we take the report, let me go to Captain Iyai. Captain Iyai, listening to Balami, what's your perspective?
First of all, let me quickly make a point in support of what the chairman of the Evasion Committee in the House said.
Go ahead.
The TSA, that the 25% that the agencies have to contribute to the TSA is actually an illegal contribution, because by way of ICAO convention, any money realized from aviation should be, reinvested in aviation. Now, when government takes 25% of the takings of the agencies, that is now adjudged to be a tax. And for that purpose, it becomes illegal. So ideally, TSA should not have any contribution from aviation at all. I rest that there.
Okay.
Now, going to the issue of how do we put the necessary things in place to see growth and all that, and taking a cue from what Balami said, even the MD of FAN would agree with me that a couple of months ago, there was a talk about maybe 17 airports being unviable. And I made it clear at the time that no airport should be unviable, except, of course, the policies we're operating are not effective. Now, I say this because you cannot have the sort of aircraft types operated by Nigerian airlines fly into airports where they can only pick up 10 or 15 passengers. There is absolutely no way they will be profitable. For that reason, most airlines in Nigeria focus on Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt, which is why we have about 80% of the total traffic in the country concentrated amongst those three airports. My belief is that for that problem to be resolved, there's a need for the Civil Aviation Authority to review its licensing policy of airlines. We should have airlines at different categories to cater for different sizes of markets. operating different types of aircraft based on size. That is important because if you don't do that, the one-size-fits-all we do now will not help our industry to grow. That is a fundamental policy change that's required before we can see growth in terms of passenger numbers. I mean, most airports in the country, about 17, 18 airports in the country have less than 10,000 passengers per annum. And that should not be the case. If you have niche market operators licensed by the Civil Aviation Authority operating within those markets, you would find that because they operate smaller aircraft types, their operating economies are lower, therefore they can afford to charge low fares. This is a model that needs to be looked at if we need to change anything at all in the industry. Now, we've talked a lot about the numbers of what airlines have to, endure in terms of operating costs and the rest of it. Yes, there are punitive costs in the industry. Added to that is the fact that the airlines are actually the victims of punitive taxes and charges within the industry. If agencies need money, the first thing they do is to hike tariffs. And the beneficiary of that are the airlines. So the point is, if those taxes, charges, and fees continue to increase, the pressure would only increase more on the airlines. And it becomes, it's actually a vicious cycle we get ourselves into. You need the airlines to increase the number of passengers for fun to earn more money, yet you increase the time and the tariffs on them, whereby they cannot provide more flights and reduce the number of passengers they're carrying. And then invariably, you as FAN or NCA or whatever, you earn less. So the point is there's a need for us to actually study the effect of the taxes, the fees, and the charges we impose on the airlines and the industry. That's a major bottleneck to growth in the industry. There are quite a lot of other issues, which obviously, if one wants to go ahead, we're talking about, maybe in the next hour or so, we're still talking about the issues. But fundamentally, I think our policies are more at a disconnect with the realities we're faced with, and that needs to be addressed.
Thank you so much. Well, we'll sustain the conversation after this breather with reports, and our first port of call tonight is a report from Lagos.
Tranquility was the ambience at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, one of Africa's busiest airports, for more than 3 months, with the airspace totally grounded due to the COVID-19 lockdown. The situation reaffirmed the importance of transportation to economic vibrancy.
Nigerian airlines lost almost $1 billion in revenue, as well as an additional $800 million, which these airlines would have been able to remit as charges to the federal government, which will have increased our GDP by 800 million.
A lot of events are now done virtually, from trade shows to concerts to even purely ceremonial events. So you find that business travel, which is the primary income earner for the aviation industry, is going to be redefined at a much lower level than we have seen in the past.
As the dark cloud fades off, the airwaves are becoming active, with flight operations ongoing at the domestic services since the 8th of July. The dynamics associated with trade and investment in Nigeria's commercial hub, Lagos, is invariably being restored.
But there are some things that would involve interface between people, which the opening of the aviation now would bring about. The opening of the airspace now, people will begin to move. As people are moving, goods and services will begin to move. And most importantly, before the opening of the international passengers route, the ticket fare were expensive. The cost of moving goods were also very expensive. Now you expect those things to drop. And once they drop, they're going to stimulate more travel.
For me, the palliative for that sector should be a direct intervention in terms of funding for that sector, because that sector is a very critical sector. It's highly capitalized in terms of funding, because most of them do their repairs outside. Will the CBN be able to give them we will have the exchange rate volatility challenges now?
Experts say the aviation industry might be experiencing a slow start, never before seen. However, the commencement of international flights will give a rapid push to the resuscitation of a global dwindling economy. Will the aviation sector in Nigeria ever experience an influx of as much as 8.5 million travelers or more in local and international flights subsequently, as it did in the first 6 months of 2019? Only time will tell.
Our next port of call is a report from Port Harcourt, Rivers State.
At the resumption of flight operation after the lockdown, the emphasis then among stakeholders was on the need to adhere strictly to the COVID-19 standard protocols. The essence was to ensure safety of passengers.
The social distance has been maintained satisfactorily. The temperature monitoring of all the passengers, staff that are accessing the terminal building has also been very satisfactory.
Azubike Igwe is the facility manager in one of the airlines in Nigeria.
Opening of the international airspace and international flight is going to boost the economy. All our aircraft parts, even our expatriates who fly and our engineers all have to go in and come out. We will also be watchful and mindful of how the virus itself came in the first place, and also put in measures to prevent a reoccurrence or a second phase.
Economically, Mark Derefaka believes the resumption of international flights will further boost business activities and create jobs in the informal sector. But he is quick to advise the authorities to apply COVID-19 standard protocols.
Are they doing the normal thing, the social distancing in the airplane, and all the necessary things? When they come, did they quarantine them?
We can't cluster in order to make that revenue. We have to work some modalities to make sure that we distance ourselves.
The state chairman of the Petroleum Marketers Outlets Association, Chelam Timpa, says statistics from market forces indicate a positive rebound in economic fortunes, which is partly attributable to the flight.
The statistics before us shows that purchase of fuel is increasing by the day. That means activities are beginning to boom again.
At the moment, international flight at the Port Harcourt International Airport is due to resume in the next 2 weeks.
On this segment, let's take a critical look at compliance with, adherence to the protocols. So far, since the resumption of domestic flights and now international flights, what's your assessment regarding compliance with the protocol? Because the Minister of Aviation was very emphatic and he was very bold to say, first of all, that the first culprits, the VIPs, ministers, legislators, top military officers, so far, how's it been?
Well, so far, the response is very good. I think everyone got the message. All stakeholders and other passengers and the same VIPs, the last few weeks has been very good. No negative reports from any of our airports, and the protocols are working very fine. We just keep monitoring. We have an enforcement department working around the terminals, but we don't seem to be getting any negative results of recent.
Because the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 had emphasized that they will even go to a point where they will even name and shame some of these officials. Have you not had cases like that?
Yeah, we had cases like that, but even at the time, some people were calling us, and we made it very clear that the naming and shaming is not aimed just with the primary intention of naming and shaming. The primary intention is to ensure that maybe when we name people, they realize how important it is to not FAN or aviation alone, but to all Nigerians. In aviation, this is our business, it's our livelihood. We suffered many months due to lack of operations, no revenue, and the industry is being threatened with collapse. So we are taking the first chance very seriously to ensure that when we start, we are starting for good. We do not want to start and then stop because maybe suddenly we find out aviation is a weak link. So we wanted to start and make sure that when we start, we're starting for good. What is for good? That we assure people with their safety and security. So long as we're here, you hear me talking about safety and security a lot, because that is our currency in aviation. So we want to continue, and we want people to take the protocols very seriously, because protocols, no matter how good they look, they are only protocols. We need people, stakeholders, to make the protocols effective. Protocols are just equipment and maybe some tools you put in one place, but the people using the airport, passengers, agencies, even the fan staff, are the ones that make the protocol either useful or not useful. So we put in the protocols, we train a lot of our people to sensitize them on the importance of the protocols. First, how to protect themselves, our staff. They did a lot of training through the World Health Organization. In fact, at one time, even the World Health Organization sent a message of congratulations to Nigeria, because when we started doing the training, I think within 3 days, they saw almost 8,000, they wrote the number, over 8,000 people from Nigeria were doing the COVID-19 training, about 3 or 4 different trainings. So we did all to make sure before we commence, our personnel are properly aware of what they need to do, how to protect themselves, and then if you can protect yourself, we believe that you are in a good position to assist and protect others.
Okay.
And then when you do that, we need to make sure that people pay attention. And if they don't pay attention, then we need to do whatever we can to ensure that your own confidence as a staff is not undermined. Because when you talk, you are brushed aside, your confidence will start becoming undermined. You cannot discharge your responsibility very well, and then it starts eating down the system. So what do? We say, if we have to name, we will name, but not primarily to derive any benefit from the naming, but to derive the primary benefit of ensuring that whatever we do it very well, we achieve it, so that aviation starts and continues, if possible, forever. We don't want to stop.
Okay. Our phone lines are open. When we return, we'll take some calls, and also our Twitter handle. You can be part of the conversation tonight through our Twitter handle at TuesdayLiveNTA. How do you just oppose compliance with laws within the country, and when you go out, how you obey them, and when you come back, how you disobey them in Nigeria? That will be after the break. Stay with us.
For now, the best and most efficient way to avoid getting infected is through regular hygienic and sanitary practices, as well as social distancing. As individuals, we remain the greatest weapon to fight this pandemic. By washing our hands regularly with clean water and soap, disinfecting frequently used surfaces and areas, coughing into a tissue or elbow, and strictly adhering to infection prevention control measures in health facilities, we can contain this virus.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
And tonight we'll take a look at the aviation industry and the Nigerian economy. Before we went on break, I said when we return to this segment, we look at compliance and compliance with laws and also obeying protocols at this time. Let's go to Enugu. Honorable Nolim, so far, would you say you are impressed with the level of compliance by VIPs and other Nigerians regarding conforming with the laws at the airport?
Yes, I must say that initially when it was introduced, we had a report from the managing director of FAN. He complained about some VIPs faulted the compliance, but we've been talking with him, and from what he just said, everything has been okay, no problem yet. I think we're impressed with the compliance so far, and we expect it to continue. Because if you travel outside the country, Nigerians are always law-abiding, and I believe that back home here, with the development of this coronavirus pandemic, they should also comply very well.
How well has your committee from the House, and maybe let's look at also even from that time you have joint sessions with that of the Senate, looked at oversighting regarding in-place facilities at Nigerian airports for service delivery?
Well, what we usually do when, like I believe when we come back now, we have to look at we have to start the oversight, because there are projects that we expect them to have done, and they will start oversighting of those projects and start looking at what they have done and what they have not done, and to see how we can help them to achieve their targets. And because you know, before for months that we have not the aviation industry has not been functioning, we are actually going to pardon them in some aspect, because the industry is just coming back to life. So, but once we come back now, we start our oversight. So we're going to follow it up, both the House and the Senate.
Yeah. Nigerian, would you say you're satisfied so far with efforts by agencies, the government, at providing facilities at airports across the country?
You can testify to that they are just doing very well. I'm impressed with the FAN, I'm impressed with the NCAA, I'm impressed with all the agencies in the industry, even the ministry itself. I believe we're all impressed with what they have been doing so far and what they have done.
Thank you. Let's go to Captain Iyayi. Captain Iyayi, confidence building is one thing that makes people maybe play through or patronize or participate in a particular industry. Clientele, operations, and regulations. So far, so good. Since you left office and now, even with the new normal, would you say we are leapfrogging or we are dwindling?
No, we've made tremendous progress in the last decade, no doubt about that. Aviation has grown, and actually, one of the several metrics you use you use numbers in aviation really to show whether there's growth or otherwise. In the last 10 years, we've seen growth, phenomenal growth, as a matter of fact, in different sectors. In different areas of the industry. However, this growth would have been much more than it is. And that's because I believe the policies we operate in are not effectively helping that to materialize. But, hopefully we can address that, and then we can see more growth. The industry, I believe, a lot of people who ordinarily would be traveling now, who are not traveling, are a bit skeptical of traveling because they're not sure of how much has been put into their safety and security in terms of facilities and tools available for both the airlines and the agencies to work with. For passengers, I'll say this. Every modern day airliner has what you call high efficiency particulate air filters. What that does basically is that it recycles the air in a cabin every 2 minutes, pretty much. And the air does not flow backwards or forwards, it flows downwards. So what that means is that it reduces the risk of contamination within the cabin to the barest minimum. And the system, when installed on aircraft, is capable of removing about 98 to 99% of viruses and bacteria in the air, making the cabin air very safe. So a lot of passengers need to understand that this is a reality on airliners. I know a lot of people have talked about how come you don't have social distancing or physical distancing on the aircraft. This is the reason why you do not have that. Besides that, there are other economic factors to consider. So on an airplane, you can rest assured that you're very, very safe as a passenger because the aircraft is equipped to ensure that the air that you breathe is not contaminated, particularly because we actually have short sectors within the country. So I think it's important.
We'll get back to Captain Iyayi. The signals freezed at some point. I'll still get back to him regarding best practices in terms of regulation. But, Balami, let's look at employability. When you look at, as much as there's this saying that the business is not profitable, the business is not doing well yet, you have not left the business. So let's look at, as much as you say it's expensive to run, and even within the new normal, you have talked about, you saw opportunities. We heard about job cuts, wages cut, but in your own case, we are here about people making more money. So employability, would you say the aviation sector is doing well to contribute to the economy in view of the fact that Mr. President talked about taking Nigerians out of poverty?
Yeah, you see, aviation is doing a lot. The MD of FAN is here. He's employing over 10,000 workers.
Leave FAN alone. Look at your sector. You're a player.
It's the same sector.
No, the point I'm making is that you are like in the front burner.
Okay.
They are like people walking through your axis.
Yes.
From your own, you're a key player.
Yes.
From your own side of it.
Yeah.
Employability.
Employability. You see, as far as I am concerned, in our own sector where we are focusing on aircraft charter and aircraft maintenance, as far as I am concerned, it's virgin. It's virgin, which means that if we get it right, the aircraft maintenance arm of aviation, right? That's the maintenance arm, the aircraft maintenance repair and overhaul, has the potential to employ tens of thousands, I meant. Why? Today, as I speak to you, over $1 billion is being spent annually to fix aircraft overseas. Today. Now, if you set up maintenance facility, you do all your overhaul, calibrations, you do all the checks, landing gear, overhaul, engine overhauls, and you calibrate all the cockpit instruments. I tell you, Nigeria alone is having about 70% of the aircraft in the region, in the entire West Africa. That means you're keeping about $700 million US. That will create tens of thousands of jobs annually. So as far as we are concerned, we are going into the business as private individuals, as young entrepreneurs, because we have seen the opportunity. We know it's virgin. We know that all these years past, part of the reason why most airlines cannot cope with the operations is that aside the fuel, they will always come back to fix the aircraft every year, every 18 months, every 24 months, and they have this aircraft in tens of numbers, right? So employability, yes, there's an opportunity to grow. And the good thing also is not just that. When I was the national president for aircraft engineers and pilots for 8 years, I was elected for about 8 years. Throughout my tenure, I know that we sent back to Europe, America, and other parts of the world 380 expatriates with the support of NCAA, with the support of the Evasion Minister, with the support of Nigerian immigration.
Is that still sustained?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we discovered that if you go to South Africa, you go to Kenya as a Nigerian, they give you only 3-month visa. No matter your experience flying an aircraft or no matter your experience fixing aircraft. After that 3 months, they will renew you for another 1 month or 2 months if there's nobody in Kenya or South Africa who has that qualification or that technology transfer, right? So we said, why? Why is Nigeria different? And we got the support of the Evasion Ministry, the NCAA, the Nigerian immigrations, you know, and I am telling you today, when I came into the industry about 15 years ago, I will tell you that most of the chief pilot, chief engineers, most of the CEOs of all the airlines were expatriate. Now, I'm not a racist, but I'm a Nigerian. So why shouldn't we have, you know, an opportunity to also express ourselves? I mean, we go to the same school in US, Canada, UK. We beat these white guys in the class, and you come back to Nigeria. So that has changed. So that environment has been created. Today, when you hear Aero, when you hear ourselves doing C-check, D-check, when you hear Bristol Helicopter doing C-check, D-check, guess what? 100% Nigerians, in most cases, handling it. Today, when you see Air Peace saying that they have over 30 aircraft, you see Arik, go and check. Almost everybody in charge, from the CEO to the deputy MD to the COO to the chief pilot to the chief engineer to the head of quality control, all of them Nigerians. And even some challenges we've even had, even that period, you know, the expatriate community tried to, you know, make it look as if we're not ready. No, we were. Because in Bristol, I could remember clearly, there were 2 major incidents before the last incident in Bristol Helicopter, where a female Nigerian pilot with a co-pilot ditched on the Atlantic Ocean with nobody hurt. Previously, before then, we had challenges with Dana, we had challenges with Bristol, about two issues, you know, happened, but they were all expatriate. We know our terrain, we are qualified, we are trained, because there's no Nigerian standard in aviation, it's an international standard. And today I'll tell you that even the person heading the International Civil Aviation Organization in the world is a Nigerian. So we are growing, we are, you know, there's hope. It's just for us to believe in ourselves, look inward, and build this country, because nobody, no expatriate will come and fix our industry for us. We have to do it ourselves. And that is why we are investing in the industry. And we also believe that the government should come and help us with support, with, you know, loans and what have you. Not just airlines, not just maintenance, but the ground support, the aviation training organizations, the catering, you know, everybody needs support.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back to Captain Iyai. He's back. MD, we'll come back to you. I need to clear. So, Captain Iyai, from the angle of global best practices, and Balami Isaac touched on it briefly. He said aviation is all about international best practices, but we'll ask, some clients think globally but act locally. And because they think globally and act locally, a lot of things are falling in place and things are working for them in terms of affordability and even employability, like Isaac has said. When can we also in Nigeria think globally and act locally?
But I mean, it's not a matter of when. It's a matter of if we're willing to do that. We should be doing that already. Like you said, there's been a concerted effort, particularly in the last 10 years, to try and localize the industry using international best practices. And that is why you have come out to see most of the major airlines in the country today are run pretty much 100% by Nigerians. So, yes, we're doing a lot of bringing back international best practices using local templates, so to speak. I believe for it to be sustainable in the longer term, again, I'll revisit the issue of policies. If you want to localize international best practices and then modify or adopt that to suit our environment, then there's a need to look at the policies we're putting in place vis-a-vis what our environment requires and try and marry that so that ultimately you would find that if you're able to achieve a sync between the policy the environment, and international best practices, then you come up with a hybrid of what is best suited for your particular environment without necessarily negating the objective of international best practice.
Okay, I'll come back to you. MD Alfred Fan. Now, if you travel out, let's go a bit, let's do some comparison now. If you travel out and you arrive in any of the airports, you just walk, pick a trolley, and you take it to a point and you leave it there, it is picked. Why is it different in Nigeria, mostly with local flights?
Well,
at the point of arrival, you want to board a flight, somebody is there, you pay before all the... Why is it different?
Well, we resolved that. I believe we started resolving it about a year ago. The Honorable Minister issued a directive that, look, okay, it was a directive that trolley service will now be free in Nigeria. So previously, we have companies that were rendering this service. And now when we told them that their services are no longer needed, now we do not have those companies, and FAN has engaged people that will be retrieving the trolleys. Any country you go to, even if you leave the trolley there, they have people that are engaging to recover the trolleys and rearrange them back inside the terminal. So in Nigeria, we're also doing the same. We just received, the only drawback is that we started receiving our order of trolleys sometime around February this year, after the change in the policy. And between February and March, then the coronavirus came. So we have a large stock of trolleys on ground. We are now busy trying to share them out and implement the no-charger policy.
There's another worry too, would I say for some time or lately, every person going to the airport should be relaxed, whether you're coming to drop off, whether you're coming to pick up somebody, but people going to the airport are virtually always, all the time, on the edge. Where to park is a problem, how to move. You find people, whether they are fan staff, whether they are what, all kinds of persons rendering all sorts of services. You are arriving from the aircraft, somebody can I have you with your bag? Why should all this be? Can't we eliminate this class of persons? Don't they appear as an eyesore to the airport?
They are very, very big eyesores. We are working daily to resolve their problem, but in doing that, we also have challenges that sometimes maybe we find it very difficult to quickly expedite the resolution of such challenges. For example, today you evacuate 20 people. Suddenly, within the next 2 weeks, you receive 7 petitions from 7 different people. The same week, you do another one, petitions come. Some call their lawyer. Some will take you to the House Committee on Ethics. Different challenges, people, that is one area of challenge. Another one is people, there's a category of stakeholders that come to the airport and they now actively or rather aggressively fight the FAN personnel that are empowered to now enforce this sanity. I've seen videos of our staff being beaten, sometimes with clubs, sometimes with guns, and when people are being beaten in public, it greatly undermines the confidence of the people doing this service. And whatever we do as FAN, because we are not armed, we have to do it through proper writing and appealing and begging, and not so many people listen to begging and appealing in our society. I also saw a video where some people were trying to sanitize in Abuja airport. They were beaten up. They went to report to their supervisor some meters away, and the people that were beating them saw them going to report to their, and they followed them and beat up the supervisor in front of his own subordinates. Now, it will take months for us to get the confidence of these people and the ones that heard the story. So we keep working on this, but the challenges of petitions, court cases, and nobody is there, FAN is alone to keep on defending. So our time is spent between trying to resolve with the court cases, trying to resolve with the petitions, trying to plead with some people or agencies that are maybe aggressively now beating off our personnel.
But so, you establish guidelines to check all this?
There are guidelines, but the guidelines can only go so far or as far as that. I'm talking about practical issues. There are so many things you can read in the newspaper. We can say, on paper, they look very good. When you are tasked with any practical job, practical solutions are what we are looking for. So at FAN, we try to work with practical solutions. And you are asking me and telling you the practical challenges we are having. When you go, just try and be there. So, I think if you look at it now throughout this year, it has improved. We wrote many letters to relevant agencies in government. We wrote to the NSO, we wrote to the police, we wrote to almost everyone. And I think we are getting some understanding. But what I'm telling you is previously, the last maybe many years, it's just that we never got any support. And maybe we didn't actually escalate our issue. So we've been escalating the last 8 or 7 months, and we are getting much more understanding or support from some people. But actually, this is the issue. Practically on ground, it doesn't work. There are so many challenges, different aspects of it.
Okay. Well, when we come back after the report from Abuja, we shall be looking at outsourcing of services in the aviation industry in Nigeria. How does it add to the economy? After this report from Abuja.
Aviation industry is a capital-intensive business where productivity per worker in the air transport industry is very high. It could be as high as 3.5 times the average for other sectors. As an industry that provides the only worldwide transportation network, which makes it essential for global business and tourism, it plays a vital role in facilitating economic growth, particularly in developing countries. A record by the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, stated that aviation transports close to 2 billion passengers annually and 40% of inter-regional exports of goods. It also stated that international tourists now travel by air. The air transport industry generates a total of 29 million jobs globally through direct, indirect, induced, and catalytic impact. Aviation's global economy estimated at $2,960 billion, equivalent to 8% of world gross domestic product. In all of these, Nigeria is not left out, as the industry has contributed a lot to the development of the nation, especially during the COVID-19 lockdown, where other means of transportation were shut down. Air transport remained the only available distributing essential items to contain the pandemic.
Before government came in with the total lockdown, so many people were on a trip, hoping to come back in between that time. So it was quite, would I say, shocking and even traumatic for some people. I mean, you are away from your family, you are supposed to go back at a certain period. All of a sudden, you cannot move. So the only way out during that problem was the evacuation flights that were approved to operate at that time. This evacuation flight was what saved the day for quite a number of passengers. You know, for economy to develop, you need to be able to move people and cargo and goods and all that from one point to the other quickly. You cannot imagine how long it would take for someone to travel in between countries, going either by road or by sea. So aviation is a very, very important, tool for economic growth.
Whatever reason it means, you've locked down aviation. Aviation, in general, it connects people and cultures and it connects everything. Aviation right now, not because I'm in aviation, you can say to a very, very large extent that is the business of the world. Without aviation, the world will change completely. Science and technology and innovation has changed the world, and it's done so much more through aviation. So if you shut down your doors, you shut down your airports, you shut down your flights, it means everybody is isolated. And then the development will go away quickly. So businesses were distressed, people, family life, relaxation, everything was affected. So with aviation coming back, we are talking about we are coming back to our normal ways of life. Business-wise, social-wise, family, everything.
Air transportation is considered the safest means of transportation. However, there are challenges of infrastructure, lack of access to finance, regional barriers, particularly in Africa. But the greatest task before Africa is a single African air transport market, commonly referred to as open skies. These challenges highlighted are part of poses for the panel to provide answers to tonight. Emmanuel Ayemiro, NTA News.
Core issues raised there in our last report, we'll address them also within the program. But our last part of call on reports via Vox Pop is coming from Ibadan.
Yeah, I support what government has done, and I think they should carry on and help the economy. Many people are suffering. The airline business is already down. So if the government allows the resumption of flights, I think many people will be happy. And it's good for everybody, it's good for the government too.
By the resumption of the flight, it will help the people to get back to their various economic activities. And that will help family resources to be resuscitated. Most businesses that are down will be able to bring in their goods. The manufacturing industry also will be able to get back to work and do their best. It's a good thing for us, but in the process of it being a good thing for us, we will appreciate if the protocol, the COVID-19 protocol, the plan, the principle put down in relation to flight system be endorsed in such a way that when it is observed, we will preserve life and then we'll be able to sustain our economy. There is no nation that can survive when the economy is grounded.
We can't keep closing economy for a very long time because a lot of business is going to suffer for it. So we can't keep closing. We have to open it up, but the instructions need to be adhered to that.
The problem our people have was that if you not force them to do something, people might say do this, or government might say do this, and some of them might neglect it. Law enforcement agencies to make sure that all the things they ask people to do, they do it.
Talking about the COVID-19 protocols, we adhere very strictly to those protocols, yeah? I believe you've gone around and you've seen the measures we put in place in strategic places, talking about location of automatic hand sanitizer dispensers. They are fully in place. And our staff are also equipped with necessary PPEs, personal protective equipment, to take care of this aspect of our operations.
First of all from Ibadan, and we'll begin this segment by going to Enugu. Honorable Nolim, before we went to take the last two reports, you heard what the MD of FAN raised. How can the House of Reps or your committee help in tackling this problem at Nigeria's airports?
Well, you know, the problem is the problem we have in Nigeria is implementation. It's not that we don't have this issue. He briefed us on these devil issues, but the issue is that as long as the security, we have APSEC, aviation security, at the airports, but because they don't have guns, Nigerians don't respect any security operative that doesn't have gun. So that's just the problem. And it boils down to taking the matter to police. Because whatever you do, they still not respect. But I believe that with time, they will start to understand the need to respect the APSEC. You know, that's just what we have. Because we issued a statement from the House and also a statement from the Senate and even a motion on this aspect. But you know, it's a difficult thing. But I believe with time, everybody will understand it.
Okay. Captain Yayi, very worrisome. You attend conferences at the AU, you attend conferences at ECOWAS, you hear so much about plans by AU, plans by ECOWAS to resolve a few issues within the aviation industry. When can we have flights fly within Africa? I live here straight to an African country, not connecting through one country to the other, or going to Europe before coming to Africa for a flight I would have used maybe 2-3 hours and I'm settled. When can this be resolved?
Well, thank you very much. Basically, I mean, the AU, I mean, the African Union has been doing a lot in the last, I mean, I think since 1997, I think it was. We had the Yamoussoukro declaration that became a decision, which, you know, set up the framework for the single African air transport market. Unfortunately, if you look at the whole of Africa, aviation in most African countries have been pretty much protectionist. A lot of countries are mindful about their markets, and they're very wary of any other country coming in to take up their market. However, if you look at it, Nigeria is a market everybody's looking to want to exploit. But except, of course, we have our government and other governments who operate based on a framework set up and signed onto by, I think, about 30 countries now out of 54. If we have all that agreed and worked out, clearly, then the reality of being able to fly from any point within Nigeria to any other African country will almost become a reality. But unless those protectionist tendencies are removed, which most African countries have, particularly because they believe they have a small market and you don't want any stronger carrier coming in and taking undue advantage. And so in some cases, some countries are protecting that market for their prospective national airline to come up. So these are not issues that can be resolved by fiat or by continued consultation and negotiation. I believe that over the next between 5 and 10 years, we should have a realization of what is currently operational in in Europe, where you can fly or operate bases out of some different countries, even though it's not your country of operation. So that, I believe, is something the AU would necessarily need to drive. It is feasible, it is workable, but it requires the cooperation of all 54 African countries.
Okay. MD Fan, what is Fan doing regarding outsourcing of services? When you talk about FDI, foreign direct investment, if you don't outsource, for instance, if you go to some other airports, you say Ethiopian Airline, for instance, you find that their services within that country have been outsourced to a local company. But in Nigeria, we still find Ethiopian Air, for instance, managed by Ethiopian Air directly, not outsourced. What plans are we having towards this? I'm just using Ethiopian Air as an example, across board.
I believe we already have it in Nigeria. What you see most of the time is maybe some airlines haven't implemented it, but most airlines do it because it eases on their burden of cost. It's more cost effective. Generally, they tend to use their handling agency, the handling companies. You might find the manager, the country manager, or the station manager being from the country of origin of the airline, but most of the staff doing the check-in, doing the ticketing, they are from the maybe country where the airline is departing. Like in Nigeria, you can find personnel of SACO or NACO doing the ticketing or checking for some airlines. It might not be all of them, but in different countries, they have different levels of implementation. And for us at the airport, our business is actually, as of now, the whole world, airport operation or airport business is primarily what you can call outsourcing. We don't do most of our responsibilities within the terminals. We have others doing them. From the time you arrive at the car park, enter the terminal, do your check-in, screen, go for pre-boarding and board, I believe 90% of the time you hardly get to mix with any fun stuff. People assume it's fun, but it's not fun. You see the cleaners outside, you see the retrievers, you see the cleaning companies, they are not fun stuff. They are just more like outsourced companies. You see the ticketing agents, they are not fun stuff. They are working with the airline staff or handling company. The only time you see real fun stuff, maybe direct interfaces during the security screening. But when you are going for the pre-boarding, it's still the airlines, you see. The boarding, still the airlines. So within the terminal, airport operations and management is predominantly outsourced. We take responsibility, we provide the facility and ensure that there's compliance so that everyone has a standard operating atmosphere and is protected. Okay. Yes, that's our primary. We take responsibility, but the individual jobs have been taken care of by other agencies and stakeholders.
Okay. Isaac, you have heard Nigerians through the reports and also the Vox Pop making appeal for government to come to the aid of key players like you in the aviation industry. You have also alluded to the fact that the Minister of Aviation is doing a lot to bring you guys together, to galvanize you guys to be a bit shut up. What appeal will you want make to government to assist you guys playing in this industry to ensure that services are rendered and we get return on investment back into the economy?
Well, you see, I think there's no argument anymore about the role of aviation as regards the nation's economy, you know, and her growth. Aviation is a catalyst. Aviation is the gateway. Aviation can disrupt the system positively. So basically, we have seen big airlines like even Ethiopia, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Australia, British Airways, Emirates, you know, due to this lockdown, this pandemic, COVID-19 has brought every top 10 airlines in the world on their knees. And their governments, whether they are owned by the states or owned by private entities, the government is directly bailing them. The aviation minister is doing a lot, but we believe that Central Bank of Nigeria can do more by fast-tracking, not just by supporting just the airlines. I've told you, what is taking most of the costs. Even FAN, the aviation agencies, they also need to be bailed because there was no flight. They've not had revenue for months, and their overhead cost is huge. With over 10,000 staffs, you know, from junior to senior cadre is not easy. At least as an entrepreneur, I can say that categorically. The point is we need to be bailed across board. Airlines, aviation agencies, aviation support services, that the maintenance, the catering, the training, the handlers, the ground support equipment, whether it's SACOL or NACO, everybody needs to be bailed. Once that is done, it will help. But you see, let me tell you one good news also. And I just saw it as a window, and let me just say it. I believe that the government is actually listening. You see, right now, everybody is on his knees globally as far as aviation is concerned, including the aircraft manufacturers. So everybody is now starting afresh. I think as the whole world is opening up, this is an opportunity for Nigeria to start either this flag carrier or this national carrier. I think aviation industry have been talking about it for a long time. We that are critical stakeholders, we believe that it is important. That is, even if there's no national carrier, the existing airlines like Arik, Airpeace, Aero, and what have you, they should be supported. They should be supported, they should be funded. And of course, things have changed. Everything has now been automated. That you give somebody $1 billion doesn't mean that you go to bed. There must be corporate culture, corporate governance, right? And that is very, very important. But I feel now that Ethiopia, Emirates, Virgin, BA is starting all over, Lufthansa, why don't we quickly key into this opportunity, support what the Minister of Aviation is doing, and start so that we can compete and, you know, build the load factor together.
Okay, let's take this call, our first and last caller tonight, calling from Lagos, Babajide. Hello, Babajide. We lost the call. Now, I go to Enugu. Honorable Nolim, by way of your last thought tonight, what can be done to shore up the aviation industry to add more value to the economy? By way of your last word.
One, I believe the first thing that needs to be done is to support the industry. Supporting the industry, like the last speaker said, we need to support them by way of, to me, I believe that all the airline operators, we need to support them by way of paying their staff salaries. And also the agencies like FAN and the NAMA and the NTA, you also need to support them by paying the salaries. Then from there, they can now start, because the industry is just coming up. And also the issue of, like what he said about the supporting the airline, the airline operators, some airlines like Aero, Airpeace, Arik, I buy the idea too. They also need to be supported. Because without aviation, there can never be an economy. There can never be an economy without aviation. So I believe strongly that if we want our economy to be sustained, if we want our economy to grow bigger than the way it is now, we need to support the aviation industry. We need to improve on our airports. We need to upgrade our terminal buildings. The non-aeronautic aspect of the industry need to be the terminal buildings, the car parks. These are all the areas that you can use to generate money for the industry. So we need to continue to support the industry if we want our economy to grow. That's my contribution.
Honorable Nolim Naji, Chairman, House Committee on Aviation. He joined us from my News Network Center. It was nice having your Tuesday Live tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's go to Captain Iyai. Captain Iyai, by way of your concluding thoughts and also asking for assistance for operators in the industry, holistically, what will you be telling Nigerians and the government?
First of all, I think it needs to be understood that the airline business, even though operated by private entrepreneurs at this point in time, is key and fundamental, as a matter of fact, pivotal to the growth of the economy in the country. And to that extent, if the government would necessarily want the economy to thrive, there is a need to provide some level of sustenance to all the airlines. The CBN has made an approach by asking the domestic carriers to come forward with their requirements for resuscitation of their operations post-COVID. Unfortunately, that palliative, as it's called, has not come forth. But I think it is important to understand that one of the major problems airlines have had, particularly in the Nigerian climate, is the fact that the cost of funds have been extremely punitive. It is important from that perspective that the CBN and the federal government would look at the airline as a necessity, not as how some people call it, as an elitist field that needs to be left on its own. No. Aviation is very critical to everything the country stands for. In terms of economic growth, job creation, every major element of economic growth is tied to aviation. Tourism, agriculture, technology, everything has a line to aviation. To that extent, it is very, very critical that the federal government should consider as an urgent message from the industry that there's a need to urgently help the industry thrive by providing the necessary palliatives that would help them, bring back their operations to pre-COVID standards or levels, so that, the industry can actually sustain rather than die. That's what I would add.
Can you speak to regulations before I allow you go?
Well, I think regarding the regulations, I think there's a need to review certain elements of our regulation, local regulation, that I consider an over-regulation. And I'll cite an example. Airlines in the country do not have the benefit of amortizing the use of their aircraft assets over their lifespan within every maintenance cycle. And what I mean by that is this. The manufacturers have what you call a time between overhaul components. They have a mandatory time set for checks to be carried out. In Nigeria, the Civil Aviation Authority requires a reduced timeline below what is recommended by the manufacturers for airlines to thrive in Nigeria. I'll give you an example. The aircraft I operate in my airline, manufacturers recommend 60 months between C checks. The CAA has only approved 30 months. And there is absolutely no justification for that reduction. So what it means, beyond everything else, is that the airlines are, they're bound to recover their investments in a shorter period. Also considering the fact that the operating window is reduced it means that the pressure on the airlines is phenomenal. So there's a need to actually look at those elements that I consider an overregulation. Because if the manufacturer has stipulated 60 months, they have done their testings right to know that 60 months in any and every environment, as long as the maintenance are done as I when due, should suffice. So I think the CAA should please review those elements of their regulations which does not allow the airlines to thrive.
Okay, thank you so much, Captain Roland Iyayi, former Managing Director, Nigerian Airspace Management Authority. It was nice having you on Tuesday Live tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, Chief Balami Isaac, well, you're a key player in the industry, and what word of reassurance do you have for Nigerians?
Well, the assurance is that I can assure you that we are Nigerians and we are in the aviation industry. We understand clearly that there's no difference between what is being practiced in the West, in developed nations, and here. There's only one aviation standard. And we'll continue to do our best to ensure that we adhere strictly to recommended best practices. And I want to tell Nigerians that I used to work in aero contractors. And I know very well that based on the oil and gas requirement and the standard, if the manufacturer of an aircraft tire or a particular component says you are to use this component for 100 hours before you replace it, most airlines in Nigeria replace it after 80, less than 90 hours. So there's this consciousness, there's this effort that is being made to ensure that we don't go below the minimum equipment list or below certain standard. So we will continue to do our best, and I'm confident in what the Aviation Ministry is doing. I'm confident in what the NCAA, FAN, NAMA, the Accident Investigation Bureau, and the Aviation College is doing, producing all the human resource needed to run the sector. We just need to believe in ourselves and see how we can get this country moving forward.
Okay. And the FAN, you have said it, most times we see persons within their FAN operatives, yet they are not FAN operatives.
Yes.
Can you reassure Nigerians by way of conclusion, maybe use the opportunity to pass a riot act to those who are in an affront to the operations?
We just wish to, I highlighted that discrepancy so that people will understand that airport operations is very complex, but at the same time, very simple. We just concentrate on our responsibility, and we ensure and we empower others that are working within our facility to make sure that they also achieve their own potentials. That is number one. Number two, FAN belongs to all of us. It's our national assets. So we just need to reassure all our fellow Nigerians that, look, it belongs to all of us. We just need everyone's understanding and support in the discharge of our responsibilities. And number three, I agree with what all the previous three speakers said, because this is a profession. Even our honorable chairman, you can see, is already in aviation, an aviator. There is no cause for disagreement because we are all talking about standards and recommended practices that will give us the required level of safety and security for our passengers and all stakeholders. So because of that, we have a common interest, common aspiration in aviation. There's no magic. So we are all on the same page, and I agree with them. And essentially, from my point of view, what they're saying, in a nutshell, is whatever happens, or whatever will happen to aviation post-COVID will be dependent largely upon financial decisions, not technical, because technical decisions are taken care of by the NCA, by the airlines. We are all technical people. Whatever you do with technical issues, it assures your potential. Technical competence cannot give you the achievement. It is the funds you need to now realize that potential. So we have all that we need technically to drive through this pandemic. aviation is ready and well equipped, but technical decisions are what would largely determine our success.
Thank you so much, Captain Rabiu Yadudu, Managing Director of Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria. It was nice having you on Tuesday Live.
Thank you very much.
And Chief Balami Isaac, MD CEO, 7-Star Global Aviation. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
That's it on Tuesday Live tonight. We looked at the aviation industry and the nation's economy. Thank you for your calls and also for your contributions. On behalf of all of us, bye-bye.